Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing? I'm a little chilly myself. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to read this off my phone like a typical millennial. It seems that one of the worst things you can do these days is admit when you don't know something. We'll forgive a lot of things in this country, but for some reason, admitting when we don't know something is often taboo. Now that's quite a problem for me because I have found that the older I get, the more I realize just how much I don't know. I did not grow up learning much about Jewish culture or history. I am not an expert on anti-Semitism. There are so many things I have not yet learned about the history of hatred against the Jewish community. But the thing is, I have never been asked by any Jewish person to become an expert on anti-Semitism. I have never been asked by any Jewish person to become an expert on Jewish history and culture. All I have ever been asked by friends and colleagues and loved ones in the Jewish community is to stand beside them against anti-Semitism. That's it. I know that anti-Semitism exists because the Jewish community tells me it exists, and that's all I need to know. Period. In my mid-20s, I worked at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. And at the end of the permanent exhibition, the main exhibition, there's a quote by Martin Niemöller, and y'all probably know this. You've probably heard of it. He talks about how he didn't speak up when other groups were persecuted by the Nazis because he wasn't part of those groups. But finally, when the Nazis came for him, there was no one left to speak up. It's a powerful quote. It's an important lesson. But respectfully, I must admit that I take issue with this premise. I take issue with the implication that the safety and dignity of another community only becomes important when my community's safety and dignity are threatened. I am not here today because Jewish leaders speak up for LGBTQ rights, although they do. I am not here today because my friend Jonathan Greenblatt speaks up against transphobia, although he does. And by the way, in a moment of overwhelming transphobia in this country, when so many leaders in the progressive movement, and I have to admit some folks in the Democratic Party, are too afraid to speak up against transphobia, Jonathan Greenblatt and the ADL have not been afraid to speak up against it. And that is coalition. I am not here today because the ADL advocates for the safety and dignity of all communities, although they do. I am not here today because I have Jewish friends and loved ones and colleagues and neighbors, although I can tell you that my life wouldn't be worth living without them. That's not why I'm here. And I don't need Jewish people in my life to understand that there is a crisis of anti-Semitism in the United States right now. I don't need to have Jewish friends to acknowledge that there were nearly 4,000 incidents of anti-Semitism in the United States last year. 4,000. I don't need to have Jewish loved ones to mourn those who were murdered at the Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018, and to recognize how unchecked anti-Semitism in our country led to their murders, and to understand why it is imperative that Congress authorize full funding for the nonprofit security grant program. I don't need to have Jewish colleagues to speak up when I hear or see something that is anti-Semitic, or to understand the implication of violence against the Jewish community when Jewish graves are vandalized. I don't need to have Jewish children to be horrified by what Jewish children and young people are experiencing right now on campuses across the country, and to understand that I have an obligation as a grown adult to protect any child or young person from violence and discrimination, period. Yesterday, during a session at ADL's National Leadership Summit, I listened to a young woman, Allison Stone, a student leader, talk about her experience of a professor on her campus here in DC saying something anti-Semitic. And her primary concern in that moment was trying to figure out how she should approach her professor about this without coming across as accusatory or condemnatory. No child in this country, no young person in this country, no student in this country should ever feel that their right to safety and dignity should revolve around the discomfort of an adult, ever, let alone an authority figure. One of my best friends has a daughter in high school. She's smart, empathetic, she has a good head on her shoulders. She has become my niece. I have become her aunt. She is also a young Jewish woman in the United States in 2023. I worry about her safety, but moreover, I wonder if I'm doing enough to be an example to her, that we should never need any other reason to speak up against hatred beyond the existence of that hatred. I want my niece to understand that she doesn't need to know everything about a community in order to stand beside them. I want her to know that the saying, I don't know, but I want to listen and learn, is a sign of strength and character. I want her to know that all of us, every single one of us, are imperfect, and none of us know everything. And the greatest collective strength we have as humanity is the opportunity to learn from each other. I want her to know that there is so much I don't know, but this I do know. This I know from the bottom of my heart. There is no excuse for anti-Semitism, period. Those of us who are not Jewish need to speak out against it wherever it appears. That is our moral obligation. If you've ever wondered if you would have been the kind of person to speak out against anti-Jewish hatred in the 30s and 40s, you don't need to wonder today. Vicious anti-Semitism is out in the open. Here's your moment to join me in listening and learning. Here's your moment to say something about it. When are you speaking up? Thank you.